thank you all for coming. I'm reading from a prepared statement to the teaching today in solidarity with our faculty, students, and staff. The teaching was designed by Suzanne Perkins, here to my right, Save Hampshire's head of research, one of the group's founders, to explain why President Nelson and the Board of Trustees have made the wrong decision not to admit an entering class in 2019. After extensive conversations with Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, the Massachusetts Board of Education, and the MPE Legal Counsel, New England Commission of Higher Education, NECHE, and State Senator Joe Comer Ford, we have found the information provided to the Board of Trustees by President Nelson has serious errors. Furthermore, the explanations given by President Nelson for the administration's rapid sprint towards a merger have shifted significantly over the last month. President Nelson and the Board of Trustees failed to communicate their intentions to merge back in August, deliberately leaving the greater Hampshire College community in the dark. As Suzanne Perkins will explain in more detail during the session, the administration is not adhering to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts laws and policies meant to protect consumers. We, as consumers at Hampshire College, are having our rights ignored. Savehampshire.com, and I encourage you all to go to this website, is looking for volunteers to help us in our mission. Please sign up online and we will send you updates on what is happening in the fight to save our faculty, staff, and the core mission of our school. You can also find out about other alumni, student, and parent groups near you who are organizing their own actions. We also have a call-in campaign going on today that is to the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. Please visit the information area for more details about it and other actions, and also about other events happening here on campus, including a social justice poetry reading by Martin Espada. David Bates, award-winning storyteller, singer, alum, member of the Alumni Advisory Board, and parent of a current New Hampshire student, will be performing for us after the teaching. Suzanne will now lead the discussion. She's a faculty member with a background in neuroscience at the University of Michigan and has been the head of research for the Save Hampshire group. Please welcome Susan.
Warren, will you do me a favor and will you push the slide
Sure.
going forward thing? Because I can't do that and be at the same time.
The arrow?
Hi. How are you all? Can you hear me okay? This is tall for me. I'm not as tall as Warren is. Yeah, we can go ahead, and I think I have an introductory slide there. So this is an overview of my talk. I've made a lot of phone calls, and I'm going to share with you the information that I got from those phone calls. So just a little teeny bit about Save Hampshire. As you all know, on January 15th, we all got this email that we were very, very surprised to receive. And so we grew out of a discussion on Facebook of alums. There were 4,000 people on the alumni Facebook page, and people were extremely upset. Differences of opinion, and Ernest Chapman bought savehampshire.com and brought us into a Slack where we were able to start conversations there and then start figuring out who has expertise in PR and legal and all these other various avenues. So we have over 200 people, maybe close to 250 people in the Slack right now. And so if you have some skills and some interest, you can join us and we'll find you a place to help. So this is me. I am a Hampshire College alum, fall of '85. I am a Hampshire College mom, parent 18. And what else did I say about myself? I'm a neuroscience at the University of Michigan. I can't even really see my own slides. I finished these this morning at like 10 after flying from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I don't know what I'm saying. And so I'm the research lead for savehampshire.com. And it might be helpful if I had this on one side or the other so I could look one way or the other. Can we move it like this way?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for your patience with technical difficulties. Okay. All right, so in the board briefing packet that President Nelson, I'll probably call her minimal lots, which on and off, people who are Hampshire people know it's not disrespectful to call our president by the first name. Other people think that's disrespectful, but we've always called our presidents by their first name, so I'll probably go back and forth. I've met Mim, I have no problems with her personally. She put this list of people she had had multiple conversations with. And I was upset, and I was Googling things about the legislation, and could we possibly be losing accreditation if we just got accredited 10 years ago, and various questions like that. So I thought I would start with this list and start calling people on the list and ask what they knew and what they had said. So that's how I started. So these are some of the people I had contact with. Chris Gabrielli, he's the chair of the Massachusetts Board of Higher Ed. Alex Nally, who's their legal counsel. I had a long talk with Barbara Brittingham, who is the president of NICHE, if that's the way it's pronounced, the New England College, New England Commission for Higher Education, and they used to have a different name. I've talked to staff from, I think, both of these offices, other people have as well, for your state senator and representative. And I spoke to the chief of the nonprofit division for the Attorney General's office. So going into some background about how we got to Hampshire. So this was from also the briefing pack, or the fiscal realities that MIM put out. This shows the decline in enrollment that Hampshire has had since 2014. Whoops. Okay. So a little bit about the enrollment history. We've always been a fairly small college. When I was a student here, we were about 1,200. We were 1,100s in the 90s. During the 2010s, there was an increase to about the 1,400s. The enrollment last year was about what it was in the 80s, 1,191. We're very tuition dependent, so it's problematic if we lose 50 or so students. That's known, we all know that. And what else did I say? All right. So part of that background is that in 2014, under Jonathan Lash, we made a decision to stop accepting the SATs. We're the only, I believe still the only college in the country that doesn't even look at SATs. And what that means, it was a moral decision based on the fact that SATs highly, highly correlate with your family's wealth. But what it means is that we're not listed in the U.S. News and World Report rankings, and so we expected a decline in enrollment when we did that. And we needed to rethink how we recruit students, where we get them, how we find them, because if you look up, hard to get into schools in Massachusetts, Hampshire doesn't come up anymore. We're considered special admissions. So a lot of people don't find us anymore. So this is a graph we made, which allows a little bit more context for our enrollment. MIM chose the time when we were somewhat at the highest enrollment to show a decline, but in fact, we've had a much lower population prior to this. We had a big bump there, and we understand enrollment is a serious issue, and that every kid who comes here brings with them some dollars, whether they're financial aid or non-financial aid, but at the same time, it's a little dishonest just to show the decline. So a little bit about contribution history. Before 2014, we're getting about $4 million on average in contributions, which is not a ton. Both 2015 and 2016, we got $11 million, which was a big bump. And so we went down a little bit, as has been stated, but down from our high, again, of $11 million. It was a large drop, but it was closer to what we average. So here's a longer view of our endowment. There was some information about the endowment also in the Financial Realities pack. We have the biggest endowment we have ever had. It's a very strong endowment for a school that is less than 50 years old. So this is, kind of a summary. We know that enrollment has fluctuated. We also know that enrollment is really, really important, and that means that you have to work really hard at recruiting. I've said to several people, I've tried to recruit in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and try to be a help to the recruitment office. But frankly, they've had an interim director and they haven't had enough staff people to utilize me, but I can bring you 5 kids from Ann Arbor every single year. So if we are down 50 kids, I will bring you 5, I promise. And I suspect Chicago can get you 10, so we can make up those numbers. Go back a second. Our contributions are low, but that's in part because we are so young, including me. I'm an extremely young alum, but we are a very young group of people comparatively. Not enough of us have died, have died at other colleges and left money in their will to the college. And we will start dying, we promise. So we know we had a recruitment period in which we would be that there would be an adjustment in recruitment. As soon as we got rid of the SATs, we knew we would have to adjust our recruitment, and that was, 4 years ago. And we still are adjusting, and it's going to take time, and we knew that when we did it, and it was a moral stance worth doing. All right, so various issues on accreditations for my phone calls. Here's a little timeline of, just for those of you who are not accreditation wonks. I wasn't until I started making phone calls, but I read the accreditation letter and I didn't understand how we were in jeopardy of losing our accreditation, so I called. We started a self-study in 2017. After you do a self-study, really accreditation is conversation between a college and the accrediting association. They're not trying to ding you on various things that you're doing badly. And so the self-study is saying what we're good at and what we're not so good at and what we want to improve on. And so then when they visit, they come and look and they, agree or disagree. So then they write a report. And the president, on behalf of the college, writes an official response, which was sent on 2/19/18. That's the official university's position about our strengths and weaknesses and where we intend to go in the future. So then they meet, and they read the report, they read our response, and they give us accreditation. So we were accredited on May 5th, the 18th, in 18, I believe. Yep. May 4th. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this letter that Jonathan Lash said, because it's really important, because that's what we agreed with the accrediting group we intended to do. Yeah. So this is just a quote from the letter if you haven't read it. The plan will require, this is the plan for our financial situation, will require an initial infusion of approximately $10 million over the next 3 to 5 years. Hampshire's Board of Trustees met this past weekend, and our time was devoted almost entirely to a detailed analysis of the college's financial drivers and constraints. And so they came up with this financial sustainability committee, and they came up with trajectories and a budget for the future. So this is one of the interviews, or there's, I think, a guest column in the Daily Hampshire Gazette just recently about Standard 7. So this is what Hampshire said they were going to do about Standard 7, which is the financial standard. They said they were going to get this financial sustainability committee together. It was chaired by one of our Board of Trustees, Dave Matheson, and he's like Boston Consulting Group, a senior level person there. And so they made these recommendations, and the recommendations 1 year ago, almost to the day, were work on recruitment, work on retention, work on cost cutting through some of the programs to let people retire, and new programs. The plan would cost, as it said, $10 million over 5 years, so it was an intended investment of $10 million. There was no mention whatsoever of a merger at that point a year ago by our own Board of Trustees Committee on Financial Stability. All right, so then we get our letter of accreditation. So let's talk about the letter of accreditation for a second. It awarded us 10 years of accreditation. It says the words Hampshire is substantially in compliance with the standards of accreditation. That means we were substantially in compliance with standard 7 a year ago when we were given our accreditation. We had the requirements to do a 1-year and a 5-year report. Both of those are not unusual. Harvard Tufts just did 5-year reports. It is not a sign that you are a problematic university to be asked to do a 5-year report. And in speaking with Barbara Brittingham, I asked her, was the 1-year report a sign that we have problems? And she said, no, it's a sign you have a new president. And we want to see what's going on with your new president. It's standard pro forma to ask for a 1-year evaluation when you have a change of leadership. The 1-year report lists 5 areas that we were supposed to work on. So if you had an accreditation problem, Barbara Brittingham nicely told me, the exact wording of the letter would be that this college, that the commission has reason to believe that the institution doesn't comply with 1 or more of the standards. That would be the sentence that was in the letter if we were in danger of losing accreditation, and it is not in our letter. We are not in danger of losing accreditation. In MIM's fiscal reality report, she nicely listed the 5 things that we were asked in the accreditation letter that we should focus on. She highlighted, this is hers, she highlighted these 3 things. As you can see, we hired a new president, so check. And so these other 3 things are the things that she thinks are a concern, but as I said, Jonathan Lash already laid out our plans for how we were going to deal with those 3 things. Again, just going back to the same thing, he already had a plan which said it will cost $10 million. And we agreed to that, and that's what we were accredited on, is based on saying that's how we are going to move forward financially. I also wanted to, because this was in the fiscal report, I wanted to highlight this, that she put it as that they received this progress report letter from Niche and sort of implied that that was a shot across the bow, that we got this letter and that, you know, this was some terrible thing. We knew we had to do this report. We were requested to do the report when we got the letter back in May, and it's pro forma for them to send a letter that says, by the way, we asked you to do this report, we're just reminding you. It's a reminder letter, it was not a shot across the bow. Go ahead. All right, so these are the targeted numbers based on Jonathan Lash's target numbers, and this is where we ended up. So yeah, we didn't get the targeted numbers, but remember these were increased targeted numbers. These were increased enrollment numbers, so we didn't hit the increase we wanted to hit. I also wanted to point out a couple of the things we were supposed to do is we were supposed to we're supposed to improve faculty and staff salaries, which apparently we are not doing as of Monday. We are supposed to demonstrate improved campus community, which I don't think we are doing. And the data-informed outcomes, I guess that's another issue. But, you know, here are 2 major issues that they put in the letter that they want us to improve, which we are making worse right now. So, in summary, Hampshire has been accredited for 10 years. It has a routine 5-year report. It had a plan to respond to any statements at the beginning. And it has a 1-year report, which is not at all considered unusual. So these are the questions that I would ask. Now I have to switch to the other side so I can read it. Why does Dr. Nelson think that a 1-year meeting is unusual, or the report is unusual? Why did we end the plan for Standard 7 that our 10-year accreditation was based on? And how many students do we want? And how many students do we need? Are we going to try to hit those targets? Is that the plan or not? So in terms of the various regulations that have been suggested as part of the problem, As many of you know, Mount Ida closed without any warning, and as the legal counsel for the Board of Higher Ed told me, there's nothing similar between Mount Ida and us. Nothing at all is similar. They owed close to like $70 million in debt. They were in terrible, terrible shape. They didn't warn anybody. They didn't tell anybody, and they announced this. And UMass was going to take over, which then, rightly, people who pay the bills for UMass were particularly happy about. So that caused the Senate to launch an investigation. So the investigation by the Senate had the Board of Higher Ed take over, and they suggested in their report that there should be an affirmative responsibility of the accrediting group to tell the Board of Higher Ed if a college is failing. There was a part of that report, there was a specific amendment, Amendment 323, put out there by Rick Collins, and it had some very specific plans about having to provide funding for 4 years and having to give notification in 14 days. That died in committee 6 months ago. But it did lead them to get a working group at the Board of Higher Ed. So here's a little bit of a timeline of that. They established this working group, and they asked for a report called the thesis report, which stands for something really silly like students and helping them. I don't know. It's like it's really reaching for an acronym. So you can go ahead. Oh, there it is. Transitions in higher education safeguarding the interests of students is the thesis report. It proposes potential regulatory changes, but these are potential changes. They would use publicly available financial data, and it would require that colleges have 18 months, not 4 years, but 18 months of funding. They suggest a teach-out viability metric, and again, this is intended for failing colleges that are literally about to fail, that they would be able to tell if they don't have enough money to literally provide services for 18 months, and how they would do this metric. So I'll show you how they do the metric. This is what they suggest are high risk, medium risk, and low risk schools. All right, go ahead. I think I circled each one. If you look at the numbers, we're either a high-risk school or a medium-risk school. We would never be big enough to be a low-risk school. So any school of our size is going to be high or a medium risk. Go ahead. With the students, sorry. Now, one more. Our acceptance rate is, is between medium and low risk. So, we're fairly good on the acceptance rate for this metric. The average yearly endowment growth. I don't know what our average yearly endowment growth is, but, it's been quite rapid. It was 14% at one point. Go ahead. The average endowment per FTE per student, I just did it on a calculator, and we're higher than this $44,000 number, so we're in medium risk there. And then there's this, oops, I didn't mean to throw that in there, go ahead. Then there's this first-time students, percent of first-time students awarded Pell Grants, and that's specifically what we tried to do by having more minority and low-income students, is that we would have more first-time students who are getting Pell Grants. So based on this metric, we will always look bad even though we are doing the right moral thing. The tuition and fees as a percent of revenue is somewhere in between medium and a low risk. Go ahead. And, I didn't really know much about liabilities as a percent of assets. I'm not a finance person. Now, if the thesis report was introduced several days after the announcement, and it was included in MIM's report to the trustees on the 31st. The Board of Higher Ed said they could not believe she had included a draft report in her information to the trustees because it is not law. It's not even a proposal. So here's the schedule for how it becomes a proposal. The potential regulations won't even be written till spring. The potential regulations will be up for public comment over the summer, and then there will be a notice of public hearings, and then potentially at the end of August they might vote on it. And that's just voting on whether or not the regulations are even going to happen. And that would give us a chance to say things like, well, if you ding us for having Pell Grants, that's really problematic because we want to attract low-income students. So here are the questions I have about that. Why do we think we're in danger when we're really medium risk on this measure if it existed, which doesn't even exist right now? Have we spoken to the BHE about what impact it might have on colleges like us that are too small to ever be considered low risk? Maybe we should call them and say, hey, this is problematic for a small college. Have you, sorry, can you go back because I didn't do the rest of it. Have they argued against this issue about Pell Grants being considered part of a risky school? Why do they consider that part to be, I mean, I understand financially why they understand it to be part of why a school might be risky, but that seems morally wrong. Go ahead. All right, so here's the timeline for any actual legislation that might be happening right now. So if the thesis passes, it will be August before they even vote on whether, and then they would have to figure out the timeline for implementation after August. So we're way ahead if we think it's a problem. And then I particularly go back to this Amendment 323 issue because it died in committee last summer, and yet in the board briefing pack, MIM lists legislation is being introduced stipulating that if the institution learns it may not have financial resources to graduate its entering class, it must notify the Board of Higher Ed within 14 days. That is Amendment 323, which died in committee last summer. So either she doesn't know that, or she intentionally is trying to mislead the board. So, and this is according to the BHE legal, this is word for word what he told me, the legal counsel for the BHE. There are no new laws or regulations that would affect Hampshire College. There are no pending regulations, and there are no proposed regulations at this time at all. So again, why does Dr. Nelson cite a proposal that is dead in the briefing pack? If there are no new laws or regulations, what is the fire? I don't understand where the fire is. That was the thing I thought from the beginning. And if we had a plan for Standard 7, why did we not implement that plan for Standard 7? Because now we look really bad on Standard 7 because we never implemented what we said we were going to do. So as many of you know, there was a visioning this fall about the visions for Hampshire College that we were involved in, some of us. So Mim was appointed president in May. She sent an opening message. She had discussions with alums about the 50th. She had this interview on NEPR about our balanced budget. And then she had this on-campus visioning event. So some little specifics about those things. NDAs back in somewhere in October, November. We don't know the exact timeline. Go ahead. So here's the opening message that she sent. Part of it, I'm wondering if you notice anything that might suggest we're in trouble or that we need to merge. But if we were to sum up in a sentence my highest aspirations of Hampshire on the eve of our 50th year, it would be this. I want us as a community to rededicate ourselves to our principles of inquiry-based learning. Go ahead, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Here's her message. Hampshire's financial position is stable. That was her message to us on 10/11/18. The college endowment has grown from $32 million to $55 million, which is pretty damned impressive. So as part of her visioning, she said, this was in November, she said she was going to have a 13-member ad hoc campus advisory task force comprised of trustees, faculty, staff, and students that provides guidance to the overall process. And they want to answer the questions, what do we value most about Hampshire? How can we progress our educational model? And what can we do to contribute to the future? None of that says we are in huge financial trouble and we might have a merger. And this was November that this meeting happened. And this was the timetable she said in November. They were going to start the planning and groundwork in November. Then they were convening and engaging stakeholders this winter. They were going to have a quiet phase this spring. How's that going, guys? How's the quiet phase? All enjoying the quiet phase? And then they were going to communicate the findings of this visioning process and convene and engage stakeholders. So that was all going to happen instead of what's happening now. Those of us who met and discussed with MIM the 50th anniversary and went to these various fundraising events, single person reports she never mentioned that there was a huge need for money or there was that we were in financial trouble. It was repeatedly said that we were financially stable. So why weren't we told any of these problems? Why was the visioning committee completely dumped as far as I can tell? And what happened between 11/18, the day of the visioning, and 1 month of January, 1/15/19? What exactly happening? Did something happen that we don't know about that has put us in jeopardy in a month or 2 months? So here's the summary and kind of next steps that we are suggesting, and we're meeting. Oh, I forgot to say, we're meeting at the Curran Center with students, so that it's listed on your thing as EPH, but we're actually going to be at the Curran Center talking with students and faculty and staff, anybody who wants to come, trying to figure out some next steps. So here are questions that I would have if there are any trustees present. Here I have questions for you. Are there current and future state regulations? Are the current and future states of regulations and legislation misunderstood? Did you misunderstand them when you took this vote originally? You admitted students on 12/15, so a month later. What exactly happened in between after committing to students that you can no longer commit to students? Why were stakeholders left out? And did you do your due diligence and call all these people? Because I did. It wasn't that difficult. And frankly, every single person I talked to was just incredulous. They couldn't believe it. And so they had called them. Barbara Brittingham from the accreditation said she'll come to a board meeting and explain our situation with accreditation. She'd be happy to if invited by a trustee. And here are my questions for MIM. How much money do we think we need for the rest of this academic year? What's the exact figure? Tell us. We're alums. We can try to raise it. We will get it to you. And that's to stop layoffs. To stop layoffs, what is the exact dollar amount? Because we will have it to you in a couple of weeks. What's your timeline to raise it? What exactly do you need when? And what's the exact amount of money that we need to sustain Hampshire for 2 years or so that we can have a group stakeholder discussion about how we intend to go in the future? So here are some actions you can take. So interestingly, when I talked to some of these people, like Alex Nally, the general counsel, he said that they don't have any regulatory power over a private college. Did you know that? I didn't know that. He said, we have no regulatory power. We can ask them to do things, but they can ignore us because they are private. But he said students can fill out a complaint form on their website, and they would be happy to take it. If students tell them that they are not getting the same services because, for example, staff are fired, then they can make a complaint, and then the college would get a report saying that they've had a bunch of complaints. Currently, there are no open investigations into Hampshire College, but we could open one. There's a meeting planned. I'm not really part of this because I don't live in Massachusetts, but with with Senator Comerford and Representative Dahm. And then we are having this call-in today where we have scripts. So when I talked to the chief of nonprofit organizations, rightly she wouldn't tell me if she had any conversations with the college or what those conversations might entail, which is fair enough. That's not her job to tell me that. But what she did tell me is that her role is to make sure that nonprofits are not mistreating their consumers, who are their students and their parents. And that they could also launch an investigation into any nonprofit that isn't properly treating their consumers. And so that's why we're having a call-in. They also, by the way, have to, the Attorney General's office has to approve a merger. So if you call and say, we don't have any information about this merger and we don't know whether it will hurt us, and actually that's true for alums, will it hurt my degree when I go looking for a job that I have a Hampshire College degree and this merger has made my Hampshire College degree sound like trash? You are also a consumer, so you can call and say this nonprofit is not abiding by their mission, which is to provide education to people. And she will take your call, by the way. And so a couple of other things. As we said, please join us at savehampshirecollege.com. There's a way to say act now, and you put in your email, you'll be added to our Slack. We were thinking about trying to craft some kind of a joint statement today, potentially with faculty, staff, and students about what we're feeling. I don't know if that's going to be possible. There is also a survey. Here is the tiny URL for that, so you'll have to copy it down. But it's a survey, really quick, 7-question survey developed by one of our alums who is a lawyer who lives in Australia and is on our Slack at 4 o'clock in the morning our time. He's been fabulous. He's done all this financial analysis. He's amazing. But we never see his Slack meet. None of us see it until 8 a.m. our time. But it's a quick 4-question survey or 7-question survey that asks you questions about how you're feeling right now, whether you have confidence in the current leadership and confidence in the board and what you would like to see happen. So please fill that out. And I think that's the last thing I do.
Yeah, there's a lot of information about these things at the information table.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You can take photos of the information there.
Yeah, our website, we are trying to be a hub for anything that comes out of the students, faculty, staff, so that we can post their letters, we can post their demands, we can post media, we can try to get media to be interested in this story. I know that a lot of people, like I talked to somebody from Inside Higher Ed, they've heard a lot of situations similar to this, and frankly, they don't understand the reasons either, and they're not buying the reasons that we've heard as being reasons why this has to happen now, with no going back. And I had written, when I was a student here, Bob Stiles was actually still alive. He had died while I was a student. As you probably all know, Bob Stiles was the farmer who gave all this land to Hampshire. And he worked here for like 20 years delivering mail. And he used to walk around, deliver mail, say hi to all the students. And I feel like we owe it to Bob Stiles. Because he gave his family fortune to us. And he worked here every single day, walking around delivering mail and talking to students. And he was a lovely man. And I feel like we owe it to him and we owe it to each other as a community to get out there and figure this out and roll our sleeves up and do the work, not only giving of ourselves, but actually working to solve the problem like Bob did.
Yes.
I can take questions, although I think that the whole next thing is intended for us to have a broader dialogue. I guess I'm happy to take questions about what I know, but the students know things that I don't know for sure living in Ann Arbor, so I don't want to act like I'm the only person who knows anything here.
Can you make this PowerPoint available?
Okay, so the PowerPoint was finished by me at 10 a.m. this morning after teaching and flying and talking to people in the media and so on. And yeah, it'll be on savehampshire.com, as well as they're turning the individual timelines into We have a Save Hampshire Twitter feed, we have a Save Hampshire Instagram, we have a Save Hampshire Facebook page. You can go to all of those things and you will be able to retweet all this information and the timelines with the hashtag Save Hampshire, I think would be lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for this
Thank you.
presentation. I came in a little bit late, so I don't know your background, but that's okay. Have you had an opportunity to interact with our president and provide this viewpoint?
I did, so what I said at the beginning is I'm a Hampshire alum from fall of '85, and my daughter is fall of '18. So she's very seriously impacted by this whole situation. So I have not personally spoken to her because I can't get through on the phone to her since this all went down, but I've met her a couple of times this fall, parent weekend and opening weekend and so on, and I concur. No one was ever told there's an emergency. That's my view.
So if you want to do another turn on this, you should come and give a presentation to the faculty here. Let them hear rather than a videotape message, which some people may or may not know.
Yeah.
Because it's I sat here when I heard the presentation from our president, and it's a remarkable 180-degree, if not 360-degree turn.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that our colleagues, the faculty, the staff, and the students would really appreciate hearing your viewpoint, which I think is shared by a lot of other people.
Yeah. Well, I would be happy to do that. I was actually invited by faculty who are not here this weekend, who had to leave for whatever, I can't even remember. We've all, thank you to all the students who are sitting in and who have been communicating to us. We are all over the country and all over the world and trying to connect with each other and figure out a way. And so, we came up with this idea, I think, over the weekend, and I bought my ticket. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so I bought my ticket on Tuesday. So we are not as coordinated as we might be if we weren't in a crisis situation right now, trying to respond to a crisis. But yeah, I can probably come back. I do live in Michigan.
Hi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm a current staff member and parent, and I just want to echo that. I'm really sad that more staff aren't here. I don't think people quite understood what this was going to be, and I understand.
Well, I think we're definitely videotaping in various places. I think at some point there was some discussion of live streaming. I was on a plane, so I don't know what happened with that. I don't know if we're actually live streaming or not, but we're definitely going to try to get the word out. And yeah, we did our best to communicate from Australia and elsewhere what we were trying to do, and we just did it. We did our best, and it did. We got a good showing. I'm happy with our showing.
I think it would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that the staff are probably more in need of this kind of information because we're more split and people are more confused.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is really confusing. When I first saw the email, I was perfectly willing to give the benefit of the doubt. I had lots of questions about how come I just had a meeting with one of the deans here on the 14th of December, and nobody mentioned it to me. And then a month later, I get this email. That seemed really confusing to me. But I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt that we were in dire straits and we needed to do something. But once I started digging, because I learned critical inquiry here at Hampshire College, and I don't give up when a question is raised, so I keep digging and digging. And so when I got to that point, I just really felt like there's something. Some of the information I think that Mim has put up, she either doesn't understand and she sent it to the trustees, and to me that's highly problematic, if not disqualifying, or she phrased it in a way that was not, that made it seem different than it was, which also to me is highly problematic or disqualifying. I'm sorry, there's one up there.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a current student here. I just got here in the fall, and I want to say thank you so much for all this incredible work that you've put into this. But I also do want to confirm what you just said about the confusing material. So my friend here and I, we've been participating in the sit-ins, and so we've had like direct contact with Mim. And, you know, we would tell her our demands and like over and over again, like, this is what we want. And then she would make her decision and none of our demands would be met. But then an email, which goes to the entire student body, would say, we have deeply considered what the students of Hamp Rise Up have said. And like, that's materially incorrect. And so like, I want to reiterate that she has not listened to us. And even if she has listened, it's been like very kind of like wishy-washy.
Yeah, and Hamp Rise Up has, I think, and as well as the faculty, but I've seen that a lot from Hamp Rise Up, has really gotten to this core issue of shared governance, which is a core principle of higher ed governance anyway, but Hampshire takes it to the nth level. I mean, we were really founded on everybody being part of decision making because that's how we learn and grow together. And yeah, it's disturbing that you would sit in a meeting with somebody who then isn't listening, because that's not a good match for Hampshire. We need somebody who is a listener and who can change their opinion based on what they hear from others, because that's what Hampshire is all about. I'm sorry, you guys up in the back? I haven't, no, they worked it out. I'm also not on a fundraising limb of this. We do have a fundraising limb. I'm research. We tried to set us apart a little bit because there's so much potentially to be done. And I don't know if he's here actually, but there's but Steve. I don't know if Steve's here. He was going to come.
He is here. He's up in the corner.
Yeah, Steve. Does Steve want to speak to fundraising? Yeah, why don't you come up and speak to fundraising, because we would like money. I think we can do the money, I think. If we're asked for money, we can get the money. You have one other question.
Well, this wasn't exactly a fundraising issue, but they did, closing was threatened and they rallied.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think one of the things that's worrisome is that we are trying to rally and we're being scoffed at. We are trying to rally together to get whatever we need to save us and buy us a year, buy us 2 years, whatever, and we're being scoffed at, and that is hugely problematic. I will turn it over to Steve, who knows about fundraising.
Well, I'm being put on the spot here a little bit. That's okay. No, that's good. I mean,
Yeah, I knew you were going to be here. We've never met either.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm Steve Ehrenstein. I'm 89F, and I was involved. Bad mic technique. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Is that too much? That's good. Okay.
If you could, I'm sorry, if you could get a little bit closer.
A little bit closer. Okay. Is this better? Wow, that sounds really loud.
No, it's good. It sounds good up here. Don't worry.
I should remember this from my radio days in Hampshire. But anyway, so I was involved with the crowd pack. Aiden, a student, and I did work in the crowd pack that raised about $250,000 in 2 days. Demonstrating, I think, that the claims that there's no money available are disingenuous. I'll say, since there's some things I can't say yet because they're in the formative stages, I guess I'll speak to something. I'm never really clear how much people know already, but I want to make it clear that a number of wealthy alumni and other donors were contacted in that period, and we were told that none of them were reached out to in this process. Is everyone aware of that, right? Okay, so that's not information we have to rehash. So it's our opinion that we can raise the money we need to raise. The claims have been we need to raise $30 million to keep the school open. I think that's not necessary immediately. Our target is going to be about $10 million, because if you really need $3 million to keep the school open for 3 years, then I'm sure they'll take 10 to keep it open for 1 year, and then we'll play it by ear after that, right, so to speak. So we are in the process of creating a nonprofit. We are already accepting pledges. If anyone wants to already pledge, we're not in a position to go public with that because we want to do this carefully and we want to do this thoroughly. So the crowd pack was the way we did it quickly to demonstrate sort of proof of concept. But beyond raising that $250,000, we're in the process of looking at literally millions of dollars and talking to donors who are in a position to do that. So that's a piece we wanted. We're trying to be substantive about how we do that. That's why I can't give you a URL today or something like that. But anyone who has any interest, even in pledging $5, because the grassroots $5 donations are really just as important. And it's important to note that the people that give $1 million or give $2 million or $5 million, the big foundations and the big individuals do that only because alumni show interest, right? They will not give $1 million if no alumni are willing to give $5. So if you have nothing but $1, and I've literally at times donated $1 to Hampshire's pledge drives, you know, and you want to pledge that, then we'll take that pledge, because your dollar can lead to $1 million, literally. So I don't know if there's anything more specific I should say than that.
I mean, I don't know.
But the goal is to raise that over the next few months, and we are not concerned, you know, we're confident that can happen. Yes?
Thank you for what you're doing. And I want to say, I think I may be the only alum in the room who's recently visited this Evan in Australia. But I had a question about, so it's clear from the work you've both been involved with that the story is a lot different from what we've been told. The opportunities to bring in cash to keep us going are very different from what we've been told. As far as actually engaging with the administration, I am a little bit confused. I'm familiar with the Sweetbriar situation. I've also been reading about what happened at Cooper Union, where a very direct action was taken, which led to the resignation of the executive board, I believe, the executive committee and the board of trustees and the president. Will it take something of that nature to achieve the material success that seems to be available to us in order to get the administration to actually accept this aid?
I mean, let me think of the best way to respond to that.
It's up to them.
I think that's the best way to put it. David said it right. It's up to them, right? I mean, you know, for example, I've just personally gone through different levels of animosity towards the administration at this point. At one point I was very suspicious, then I was thinking they were doing their best, and then I was more suspicious again. And my take on it all the time is that, you know, if the current administration has zero interest in doing what the entire community does, you know, even if they disagree with it, if they ultimately bow to it, then that's a choice they can make. Otherwise, I'm assuming at some point if the administration is not willing to make any changes and the community is powerful enough, then that will have ramifications for that. But I'm not taking, I want to be really clear right here, standing here, I'm not taking an official position on
I understand that. I think we're all confused
about
what the stand should be, but...
Well, let me say this. I think the Sweetbriar model is perfect, right?
Yeah.
For several reasons. One, it worked. Two, they're a school that has, what, about 1,200 people, like we have about, 1,500, right? Their school came back from being closed, from the faculty being fired, from some of the property being sold off, from the students being gone. We're not near that.
Yeah.
So my fellow alum who say, oh, well, it's too bad they didn't tell us sooner, but it's too late. Or, oh, well, this is going to be a lot of work because, look at the momentum that's happened in terms of the school contracting or even shutting down. Well, this is a moment, right? This is a couple of weeks or a couple of months in a college that has a 50-year history. And then if we all put our energy into this, we'll have another 100, 200 years, like any good college should. So I think the Sweetbriar thing is great because it can be very discouraging in the moment and feel like we don't have options. When the reality is the Sweetbriar model is a perfect example of how we have even more options than they did. And this is, without meaning to marginalize all the effort we're doing, this is easy compared to some things that people have come back from. Especially given the unique nature of what Hampshire has to offer. There's no other alternative schools that offer the same thing that Hampshire does. So I think we have a compelling reason. And I want to say, I want to say one more thing about the Sweetbriar thing, just that the woman up there, I think, who asked about it, I think that's the right question. That's the model we're heeding. And so she brought me down to talk about fundraising, I think, because the fundraising feels a bit more like it's tied into whatever the activism is involved. Is this good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The activism involved in making that happen. So I would say that, from my perspective, the money is some of the most important piece because it puts our money literally are literally our money where our mouth is, right? And then our mouths are all really important, right? The sit-ins are amazing, these discussions are amazing, the grassroots stuff online is amazing. And I think from that and from what the faculty are doing, we're gonna start to mobilize towards whatever it takes to save the school.
Steve,
Yes.
you return the funds that people contribute towards the initial $250,000. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no.
That's what the message I got.
Right, we put that campaign on hold
Oh, okay.
because we didn't want the school to claim, hey, we admitted a class of 10 people, let's take that $250,000 now. Our intention is to have all those folks who are willing to donate to that crowd pack instead just move that money over to the new fund.
So it's still active, in other words?
In a sense, I mean, it's put on pause so that we can, I'm trying to think of this more. It's put on pause so that we can make sure that money doesn't get misused, right?
Let people know if they want to supplement their contributions again.
Yes, in fact, we just had a meeting this morning about reaching out to, there were about 500 people that donated on that fund, and literally it was like 2 days.
That's right.
So if you were on that list, you may have already gotten one email from us, and we'll reach out to you again soon.
Okay.
Basically to tell you where to, where to write that same check to instead.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Beth Gershman, and I'm a former staff person here. I moved to the Valley in the 70s, and I worked here for 4 years. So I feel like an alum, but I never went to college here. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate how positive your presentation, the information helps so much put a positive spin on what's possible. And I also just want to underline that I feel like a stakeholder here. People like me, people who live in the Valley, who recognize how essential Hampshire is to the culture and I feel completely ignored by the administration. That my viewpoint is completely ignored, that my perspective is completely ignored. And the impact Hampshire has had on the arts, the music scene, the restaurant scene, the retail scene, the farming, every single piece of Valley culture has been touched by Hampshire grads, Hampshire dropouts, Hampshire former staff, Hampshire faculty. It's just critical, and to be invited to the table as a stakeholder is a really essential part of the campaign.
I just wanted to say something that I hadn't said before. I said it to a couple of reporters about the staff, because it seems like the staff are going to be the ones getting the pink slips on Monday. Hampshire is so unique in the educational environment. We have such a unique system that we have staff who understand that unique educational system. So you can't just get rid of them and hire somebody straight out of college or straight out of high school to take their position. They have institutional knowledge. Staff at any college are valuable. The staff here at Hampshire are the most valuable staff in the 5 college system because they understand us, and you simply can't just replace them. And so I think it's really critical that we do whatever we can to stop these layoffs from happening. My ex-husband, my daughter's father, was a staff person here. If you were here in the 70s, the library guy, Tom Hart. He was here for 27 years or something, heading the library. I run into staff people here that I know that were staff when I was a student. Ann Downs was staff in in Enfield when I lived in Enfield.
Still here.
Yeah, I know she is. And, we can't just get rid of that institutional knowledge because it's cheaper.
I want to first of all thank Suzanne for the information that she's put together, and I think it's very informative. But I guess she stopped short, and I think she stopped short, and I think that it also leads to certain questions and certain conclusions. That the narrative that has been given to all of us is not holding up, right? And the real question is what's going on, right? So, the explanation for not admitting and entering class, right? Logically, it doesn't make sense based on the information that NIM has given to us. We do know, for example, that Hampshire retained Ropes and Gray, a very high-priced law firm, we think over the summer. And that in the fall, that there were non-disclosure agreements that were signed. And so the issue is that I think these are justifications, right, or excuses, and that merger talks have been well underway, and there's a partner, right? Because why else? I mean, by not admitting and entering class financially, you're losing a quarter of your revenue, right? And you're placing the school in financial difficulty. So Hampshire at this point is leaving itself no other option but to engage in a merger, right? If you want to be a strong merger partner, right, you would keep that entering class, right, and you would maintain your budget. Now here's the other situation I think that's important. All right, so we've read the bylaws. Hampshire College Board of Trustees, this has been a problem for a long time. I graduated in 1983 and was involved in the student occupation at that time in '82 over weapons contractors. But the Board of Trustees is basically a self-appointing body. Yes, there's a faculty representative and a staff representative, and yes, there are alumni on the Board of Trustees, but they're really not accountable to the rest of the community, right? So the overwhelming majority of trustee members, it's a self-perpetuating body, right? So there's only a couple of ways. I mean, and actually the Sweet Briar, situation, people brought that up. Actually, it was litigation that helped the alumni to be able to regain control of the school. That's what it came to. So I think that that there's no one single strategy. I think a lot of people are doing a lot of different things from a lot of different angles, and all of them are necessary. It's necessary to create pressure, right? It's necessary to do fundraising. But it's also important to look at the legal aspect of it. Ultimately, I would say that by not admitting and entering class, yes, the school is putting itself into financial crisis, and people may disagree with me on this, but I think the only way at this point out of this is that Hampshire needs to admit and entering class in fall 2019. So, the question is, because once you admit and entering class, right, then you're going to keep that revenue coming in, and then that's the only way you're going to avert those layoffs is by because that's where the money's coming from, right? So how do we get the Board of Trustees to do that, right? The Board of Trustees is a fairly large body of over 30 different trustees around, right? I asked one of the trustees what the vote was, right? And all I was told is it was a supermajority and that the trustees have agreed not to disclose what the vote is. So what we need to do, number one, is we need to find out who on that board voted how. Number two, if you want to reverse the decision, like in the short term, the board cannot, they have the ability to reverse that decision. So whatever, and it seems that the Board of Trustees was by them, and maybe there are some other board members, was provided with false and misleading information on which they made their decision, right? If the board understands that their decision was based on false and misleading information, they need to reverse that decision. So we need to figure out, first of all, who was in the minority in terms of that vote, right? And those other members of the board who can be swayed, right, to bring them over to our side. So that's one possibility. Also, the other situation is that Hampshire College is a nonprofit corporation. And as a nonprofit corporation, it is regulated by the Attorney General's Office of the state of Massachusetts. So that's why that we did the call. And the Attorney General's Office regulates nonprofits. Hampshire's bylaws call for Hampshire to be an autonomous institution. What happens in a merger to Hampshire's autonomy? So the Attorney General's Office, Maura Healey's office in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is capable of opening an investigation. I also spoke to them. All right, and they would, and this is normal, but they will not disclose whether they're opening an investigation or when, at what point they might open an investigation. But by putting public pressure on the Attorney General's office to do an investigation, maybe to uncover what's going on. And finally, right, a merger also needs to be approved by the Attorney General's office, right? And so that's another place, if we want to save the identity of Hampshire College, the autonomy of Hampshire College, these are the various means that we can do so.
Are we adjourning? One more question?
Sorry, are we adjourning though, soon, right, 3 o'clock? Yeah. Well, this will be the last one, and then we're going elsewhere, right, to Kern? I don't know, I don't have the schedule.
Yeah, I'm Michael Stramiska, came in '78.
Uh-huh.
I brought up sheets that are available out there, I have here.
Oh, yes, you did, I saw
One
that.
sheet with addresses for the Attorney General and other people's addresses,
Mhm.
by which to contact them, and a sheet, which is basically a letter, you fill in certain things. And the gist of it is that we want to have a fall 2019 class admitted. So anybody wants the sheets, I'll pass it to you, there's also some out there.
Thank you so much.
Also, is Maya here? I thought I saw her earlier. Is Maya around? I heard a baby. She was bringing her baby. Well, Maya might not be in the room at this moment, but if you've seen our website, Maya worked through the entire weekend on our beautiful website, and she's phenomenal, and we should all thank her. Because there's Maya! Yay!
But I want to follow